Hello, everyone. This is JT Keating. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy for Zimperium. I'd like to welcome you to another webinar. This is part of our ongoing series of the 5 must-have sections for every mobile security RFP. We have thousands of customers around the world. We've been involved in hundreds of RFPs, so we're kind of uniquely positioned to be able to do this. And one of the reputations that our company has gotten in the marketplace, which we actually value very much, is to be a trusted advisor to our customers. And a lot of people talk about that, but we've even had customers use us to run their POCs and things on those lines. And so we actually really enjoy being able to share our thoughts on these things and not just totally whitewash our own solution and say that that's what you should put in every solution. Obviously, we're biased, but from all of those RFPs, we've consolidated a bunch of thoughts. So we're going to run through the webinar. This is a third part. The first one was on threat detection. The second one was on risk analysis. Those are both available and archived on our site. We're going to run through, hopefully about 20, 25 minutes of content. If there are questions at the end, we will field them. If not, we don't make them up. We don't believe in that. And we'll give you some time back at the tail end. Standard perfunctory stuff, please do use the Q&A section to our capabilities to send any information in. We don't use the chat session stuff. We've had some issues with it with Zoom. So even if you have technical questions, please throw that in the Q&A capability. The archive of this will be up, joining the others within a day or so, and we can make slides available to anybody that's interested. So with that, let us dive in to part 3 of the 5 must-have sections for every enterprise mobile security RFP. First thing, we kind of have to frame this up a little bit, and the first thing is this: an endpoint's an endpoint's an endpoint. It doesn't matter if you have data, whether it's cardholder data or patient data or IP, sitting on a tablet. It's no different than if it's sitting on a laptop. If you needed to protect it on a laptop or desktop or server, you need to protect it on mobile. And why that's increasingly important is, in a typical enterprise today, 60% of the endpoints accessing corporate data, holding corporate data, are mobile. So all the investments that we've made traditionally in endpoint security covers 40% of the endpoints in a typical enterprise today, which means 60% are unprotected and have no visibility into them. So it's critical to have this thought process of, it's just another endpoint. There are things we have to do differently to treat these things differently, like, for instance, what we're talking about today, because we're tying into a mobile ecosystem. But fundamentally, it's the same game. Now, mobile is different than traditional endpoints. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes for the folks that are new to the mobile side, maybe coming from the security world. I'm going to say, here's how mobile is different. Then for the mobile folks in the crowd, I'm going to say, yeah, but guess what? The laws of security aren't. And there's certain laws of security that when you put them together for mobile security, which obviously enterprise mobile security is what we're here to talk about, that leads into what kind of requirements you might need from a solution. So how is mobile different? First one is this: for as long as there has been cybersecurity, carbon-based life forms, human beings are the ones that make the biggest mistakes. These folks have terrified us, employees have terrified us, from when they're inside of our network, on centrally managed machines, inside of corporate firewalls, everything like that. Now, this dude is the super user. He's the admin of his device. So users are the admin of mobile devices. Not only are they the admin in general, they decide what networks they're going to connect to, they decide what apps they're going to download, everything on those lines. They spend 80% of their time outside of our protected corporate network, and there is no such thing as a central patch management system. These guys decide when they're going to update their device or not. And as a general rule, they're way behind, because they're like, well, I don't want to update because it's going to slow it down or whatever. So they just don't update. And so the user as the admin is hugely different. And they spend all this time out doing different things, going to hamburger joints and going to McDonald's and going to Starbucks and everything. Who knows whether they're actually connecting to McDonald's network or if they're actually connecting to the Starbucks network, right? Second way that they're different, and a lot of this was covered in much more depth in the threat and risk parts. So I'm just going to hit through it to get to the mobile investment part. All the operating systems are locked down. So traditional endpoint security solutions don't work on mobile because they're used to hooking the kernel of the operating system to get all their data. You can't do that on mobile. And then finally, all apps are in containers on mobile. They're in their own little buckets. So unlike traditional worlds where an app could come in and go sideways and deal with other apps, you can't do that. On mobile, an app can only stay in its container unless it finds a way to break out and actually take over the ship, in this particular example, take over the device, right? So these are things where mobile is different. The user's the admin, operating system's locked down, all the apps are in containers. But what are the laws of security that aren't? These are time tested. I've been in cybersecurity for 25 years. These laws have been around longer than I've been in cybersecurity, okay? They're time tested and they will continue to apply in mobile just like they do every place else. First one is this. Zimperium is built from the very beginning. This whole session is on how do you build an enterprise mobile security RFP, right? Enterprises are going to be the subject of targeted attacks, not just generic, throw it out there into the wind. Somebody's coming after you, they're coming after you. So we need to make sure that we have a solution that can handle unknown attacks, but also handles the specifics of what attacks are coming. And I'm going to be talking about that, how that's unique in mobile. Second, time-tested law, been around forever. Land and expand. The bad guys are always going to find the weakest link in first. They no longer have to be, like I said, or I would probably say a couple times, the bad guys are really good at what they do. They're bad dudes, but they're really good at what they do. They don't need to have an ego play to try and go directly into some, Fort Knox server that's behind multiple firewalls and DMZs. They go after the weakest link. And then once they have that weak link, they're inside the network. Now they can go sideways. A little while ago, that was point of sale terminals that all the different hotels were dealing with, or Target was dealing with, et cetera. Now, back to a point a few minutes ago, 60% of these endpoints are in the hands of people who don't have a clue, spending 80% of their time outside of the corporate network, and they have no protection on them. It is the perfect place to go and then pivot to go sideways within an enterprise. And then finally, persistence. For as long as there's been attacks, these guys, once they take over a device, whether it's a server or a desktop or a mobile device, they're going to remain persistent as long as possible. They have, I don't want to lionize these guys. I don't want to make them sound like they're super amazing, but they're really smart and they have a business plan and they have an ROI. And when they have invested in taking over a device, they need to have a return for that. And the only way they can do that is to own it for as long as possible, which is to remain persistent. How they do that is different on mobile compared to traditional. So that's interesting. These endpoints are under attack, right? Everybody asks, well, we're just now starting to hear about mobile breaches, blah, blah, blah. That's because we haven't had any visibility on 60% of those. I mentioned we have thousands of customers around the world, right? This is important. Those customers no longer are blind on the 60% of their endpoints. So what do we see on the 60% of their endpoints? 100% of our customers detect threats. By the way, teaser, we're doing a global threat report at the end of July. So if you want to get in-depth data of what we're seeing across all of our customers, sign up for that webinar. By the way, this is probably a good place to say, I also highly suggest you follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever your preference is, because we send out a lot of information about this emerging market that everybody's like starting to catch on to in the mobile security world, including things like the Global Threat Report. So I suggest you follow us. But 100% of our customers have detected threats. What are the types of attacks? Well, there's 4 big buckets. And again, this isn't designed to be, we did the whole threat detection thing just a few weeks ago. You can go check that out. But it's important in terms of setting this up. There are 4 big attack vectors: malicious apps, phishing, network attacks. back to the laws. The only way to become persistent is in mobile, because apps are in containers, is to actually compromise the device, actually own the ship in the picture that I had a little while ago. So that is the ultimate objective, to compromise the device, own the device, weaponize the device. Apps and phishing are untargeted, and as a general rule, completely focused on fraud and completely focused on the consumer side of things, okay? I mentioned that the bad guys are very good at what they do, right? They're smart. They're not gonna drop an app in the App Store and hope somebody from XYZ company, if that's who they're targeting, downloads it. What they're gonna do is they're gonna set up a fake network directly across from XYZ's headquarters and wait until somebody from XYZ connects to it, and they're gonna compromise the device. We've always known device compromise was the ultimate objective for an enterprise attack, and frankly, it's for the consumer as well, but we're focused on enterprises. And we knew that a network attack was gonna be the case, and the data bears this out. 90% of targeted attacks start with the bad guys owning the network. That's gonna be critical when we get into how you actually build a solution to this whole thing. So those are the type of attacks. Again, go back and check that webinar out if you'd like a little bit more detail. The goals, pretty obvious: credentials, data, weaponization, especially from the standpoint of being persistent again. So with that, we have these 5 sections that need to be in every enterprise RFP. Threat detection, we talked about a couple weeks ago. Risk analysis. Threats are you're actively being attacked. Risks are you've exposed yourself to the greater likelihood of being attacked, or an attack being able to occur easier once you are attacked. Today, we're going to be talking about, okay, we've already made investments in mobile. We've made our decisions and our choices and our strategies around certain platforms in mobile. We fundamentally believe, as an enterprise mobile security solution, we need to fit into your world, not force you to fit into ours. So if we forced you to change EMMs, if we forced you to, when we start talking, next week, use a different SIM solution, or if we forced you into doing everything in one cloud, even though you didn't want to use that provider, that's not a good enterprise solution, right? So we're going to talk about the other two in the coming weeks. But today we're talking about what are the key requirements of workflow integrations on the mobile side. For each one, I just want to make sure this is clear, because everybody gets to geek out and everybody talks about this stuff. The only thing that matters is what is the business purpose. For each one of these objectives, each one of these requirements, who cares? How does it fundamentally add value to the business or protect the business from a value standpoint? So for each one of these requirements, and we do this throughout the entire series, we come back and basically say, what's the business purpose? So, number 1, we want to protect all corporate and BYO devices. So if you're putting out a mobile security strategy, you need to be able to protect all of your devices, not just some of your devices, which means you have to be able to scale back and forth, for instance, between what's the level of forensic data I'm going to pull versus how much am I going to protect privacy, right? So for instance, obviously, if you're enabling a BYO scenario, it's their device. They need to feel that their personal privacy is being maintained. Conversely, if you're in a high security, like for instance, just yesterday we announced the fact that Zimperium is now the first and only MTD provider that is FedRAMP authorized to operate, ATO. It's the highest level you can get in FedRAMP, okay? A lot of the guys that are going to do it, and you can check out, we got our blog on our site. We're going to be doing a webinar on that also in a couple of weeks. But those guys are high security. They're not going to worry as much about the privacy of, let's say, agents for an intelligence community. They're going to go all the way in the forensic side. But you need to have a solution that can kind of cover all of your devices. Number 2, every one of our enterprise customers has an EMM solution of some sort. So you need to be able to seamlessly integrate with these solutions. And obviously the purpose there are, first of all, you've already made the investment. Your users are already used to it. And so you don't want to have to force somebody into creating a new investment, have new learning curves, all the rest of that kind of fun stuff. And then honestly, as a function of this, for each in mobile, you can only have one manager on each device, and that's usually an EMM or UEM, as they're now calling themselves. Used to be MDMs. It's all kind of evolving. So those applications can have additional remediations above and beyond what a normal application can have. So a lot of times we do all the detection of the threats, and the remediation can go through them. So integrating in with EMM solutions is absolutely critical, and we've integrated with the largest number of EMM solutions on the market. Number three, oh, actually, sorry, two with an asterisk. Bonus points, and this one is very self-serving because we're the only ones doing this today. If you can actually integrate your security directly into an EMM agent, like we've done with Mobile Iron, our threat detection capability is directly inside of the Mobile Iron agent. So in that scenario, you get 100% coverage on the device. If you're a Mobile Iron customer and you say, I want that, you push a button, boom, it's already on, no additional rollout, 100% coverage. Users can't undo it because remember, they're carbon-based life forms that make mistakes a lot. And it can do on-device detection and remediation immediately. So bonus points for integrating not just console to console with EMMs, but also integrating the mobile threat solution directly into the agent provides great benefits. So that's a bonus point. I didn't want to make it its own standalone requirement because we're the only ones doing it today. But if you are a Mobile Iron customer, that is a great bonus point in terms of a requirement. Number three, you have to be able to enable the use of multiple EMMs simultaneously. What we are seeing across the board is a shift in a tide. Customers have one EMM, but now they're looking to use another, potentially, let's say, because it's coming with an ELA that they've bought from a larger company. Or they've inherited two different ones, maybe via mergers and acquisition. If you have to have completely different tenants, completely different consoles, completely different rollouts for multiple EMMs, it just increases the workload exponentially. So you need something that basically is agnostic and can handle multiple EMMs at the same time. Because you're going to ebb, you're going to change. Sometimes, by the way, multiple EMMs could be, we are historically on an on-prem version of an EMM, now we're going to cloud. Same company, still multiple EMMs. You need to enable this and to be able to handle it very easily and very cleanly. Number four, this is huge. You invested in your EMMs for a reason. And you've already established group policies. You've already established groups within your EMMs. It might be, here's the executives. It might be, here's traveling salespeople. It might be people in a certain country. It might be the service reps, whatever. You've already invested in these groups. Your security solution should be able to pull those groups in and establish very granular policies. When we detect those device network phishing app attacks or risks by group, what do I want to do? You don't want to just have one blanket policy, that says, okay, we're going to turn phishing on for our entire company, and it's only going to be like this, phishing detection, and everybody's got to take it. Well, maybe it doesn't work that way. Maybe there are certain folks, again, to the privacy side, for instance, where they're like, no, I don't want phishing detection for my BYO, right? But you've already done this investment in these groups, use them. And so a good enterprise mobile security solution will take these requirements in, or take these groups in, and then establish very granular groups for the threats that are being detected very simply. And then it just runs, right? So you don't have to play around with it from there. Number five. A lot of people have already invested in some specialized mobile investments, right? Examples, Samsung Knox, Android Enterprise from a containerization standpoint. There's some specific investments where people are saying, we've already invested in these. A good mobile security solution will work with these and help protect these scenarios as well. Again, this is an investment protection thing. So for instance, with Samsung Knox, if a phone is Knox capable, there's certain things that you can do if you're a good mobile security solution. Prevent the installation of an app, delete a malicious app, that sort of thing would be the ways that you would be able to handle and protect that. In Android Enterprise, a good mobile security solution will protect the device and therefore protect the Android Enterprise container, the briefcase, even from things that happen on the consumer side. So maybe you open a phishing email on the personal side in your Gmail, it delivers something that compromises the device. Now your Android Enterprise is wide exposed because the device wins. They've taken over the ship, right? So being able to handle and protect in those scenarios is absolutely critical. So the 3 key requirements, and by the way, at the end of each one of these things as well, I should have mentioned this earlier, we'll actually send out a PDF to you that has these requirements with more detail on them in a one-pager. So we've already done the first 2 for threat and risk, and then today we'll send out to everybody here the ones about the mobile investments. So that protect all our devices, integrate seamlessly with EMM solutions, bonus points for embedding the protection, and multiple EMMs because everybody is shifting and you don't know how that whole world is changing. Leveraging for group-based policies, it's really important to tailor your protection to your groups and leverage the ones you've already invested in. And then continue to enable specialized investments. So those are the 5 mobile infrastructure requirements that you should look at as a part of any RFP. Now, I'm only going to spend a quick hot minute, as they say, on how do we meet those, because that's not the intention of this. But just as a little bit of a teaser, and then obviously we're more than happy to talk to anybody about this further in terms of how we fit in. I'm going to come back to this real quick. This matters because the bad guy owns the network 9 times out of 10 on a targeted attack, which is why we have always done our detection on device. We do machine learning in the cloud. Once we know how to detect even unknown threats that are part of targeted attacks, we do all of our detection down on device. Gartner has caught on to this and is even saying, as you can see, you have a better likelihood of protection. Now, why is this? If the bad guy owns the network, and if all of your detection is in the cloud, the first thing they do is cut off that access. They will cut off all access to anything that would detect them. So if you're not on the device operating at machine speed, you're not able to defend yourself. And so that's why it is so critical. We have one engine that detects all these attacks on device, and it's called Z9. Z9 can be rolled out in 1 of 2 ways. If you're trying to protect your device 100% of the time, like next generation endpoint protection or antivirus for mobile, that's a product called ZIPS, stands for Z Intrusion Prevention System. If you have a mobile app and you actually want to protect that app and the session that app is having, then we have an SDK that actually drops Z9 directly inside of your mobile app. In that case, you're not protecting the device, you're protecting the app and the session that app is having. So an example from a banking world, use Zips to protect your employees and use Z-App to protect your mobile banking users, right? Both of those, the data then comes into Z-Console. One of the advantages of being able to do all of your detection on device is we are completely cloud agnostic. We have a new version of this diagram coming out that will have AWS Gov Cloud for the FedRAMP I mentioned earlier. It might feel like yesterday to you folks. But basically, we're cloud agnostic. You can also do on-prem because as we start getting into the deployment choices in 2 weeks, that's critical. Some people need to be on-prem. Some people have a certain cloud that they need to go with, right? And then integrates the stuff on the left is what we've been talking about, the greatest set of EMMs, including multiple EMMs. And then on the other side is integrating into our to the security solutions, which is the focus of next week. So with that, I would like to thank everybody. I hit it in 25 minutes. I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions. And then if not, I will release you from the conversation. Let's just see if anybody has any questions. I do not see any. So with that, I would like to thank everybody. Look for the PDF coming your way. And again, please follow us on social media. And if you're interested in the Global Threat Report or in FedRAMP, hit our site because we got webinars coming up with that. Next week, we're going to run through how we need to integrate, how a mobile security solution needs to integrate into your security infrastructure. And that's because an endpoint's an endpoint, and I need to be able to have visibility across all my endpoints and have it all come into a single pane of glass and be able to respond. So thank you all very much and have a great day.